So I have got the new Run Pacer Elite carbon fiber plated insole here from Superfeet, and I thought, what better shoe to test it out in than the Norda 005. You saw the flex in this carbon fiber plate here. This is a Carbitex plate, so it is a one-way flex, allowing you flex and contour as you're going over the trails. A little bit of a split up front here, but it's stiff in the other direction. So as you're pushing off, that's where you want that stiffness to give you that kind of plated boost there. Given that we have that flex there, I thought it would be best to try out a shoe that was inherently flexible. And here I have my Norda 005. Look at this shoe. Full Arnatel TPEE foam here. Check out my 005 reviews and other comparison content. This is a US 10.5 here. So also another thing with insoles, you want to make sure you have enough space to fit it in there, because this is quite a little bit of extra volume, say, compared to the typical insoles. I have the Norda insoles here. This is the standard one. Comes with the shoe, and they also give you a race insole in the box there, which is even a little bit thinner, has less of the sculpting around the edges there. Being that I have this in a 10.5, I wanted the 10.5 for length, but it is a little bit wide, so I've been experimenting with doubling up these insoles. I've even taken one of the insoles from the 001, 002, put them in there to give it a little extra boost, and I know I have no problem fitting this type of insole in there. If you have a very snug shoe, perhaps it's not a very good candidate for insole swapping in general, and possibly something like this. I haven't exactly measured it, but it definitely, even without the carbon fiber plate, there are TPU beaded type insoles out there, and they're definitely thicker than a traditional kind of foamy insert. This is, I believe, TPEE here, but EVA or whatever they are. These ones, minus the carbon fiber plate, tend to be a little bit on the thicker side. So you want to make sure you have enough volume within it, because if the insole takes up too much space inside your shoe, it's just going to really mess with the fit of the shoe. You might feel uncomfortability in different areas that you wouldn't feel with the standard insoles. We do have a little bit of housekeeping here. I have to trim these insoles. Let's see. Luckily I brought some tools with me here. Oh, hey. Superfeet also gives you some instructions here, and they also provide you with some scissors. Superfeet right there, check that out. Cool. I've done this before. Line up and trace trim. So I think I want to line it up here. You can see there's a little bit more arch support in here, but again, I know this 005, especially in my US 10.5, is a wider kind of volume shoe, so I don't think this will be an issue there, especially for my foot width and this sizing again. So I'll talk a little bit about the specs of this shoe once I test them out on the run, but this is a $95 insole here. I kind of want to make sure I gave them my sizing, typically 9.5, 10, so this is a size E for me. The shoe is not released yet, so I haven't seen an actual sizing chart, so you'll have to check that on the website. If you're nervous about trimming a $95 insole, or any other insole that you pay for less money for that matter, you might want to start, say you trace that line, start on the outer edge and go from there. When you cut on the outer edge, it may also make it a little bit tricky to kind of trim it by a hair if it's just a little too tight. So I don't know, use your judgment trimming insoles. Maybe try it with a cheaper version. Get a Dr. Scholl's or something from the convenience store and maybe trace the outline, cut it in a particular spot, and see how that works out before you do it on a somewhat expensive one. I'm also trying to angle it this way so that it maybe tapers a little bit, as much as I can. Maybe I didn't do a great job, but I didn't run into any carbon fiber there, so shouldn't be an issue. Let's give that a fit in here. It's a little sticky on the bottom, of course, with that TPU. There we go. Now I have carbon fiber plated Norda 005s. How do you like that? Let's stick my hand in there. Definitely feels quite thick in the front compared to this insole that I got right there. So I'm just kind of feeling around to make sure it's not really curling up around the edges here. Again, for me, this is a high volume sizing, so feels pretty good. I think I'll go ahead with the next one. Just kind of spot check. Yeah, I'm away from the carbon. We've all done this before, right? Well, not with carbon fiber ones though, that's for sure. It's hard to actually get them in compared to regular insoles. Normally I kind of like fold them this way to push them in, but there's not much lateral flexing in this plate here, so that makes it a little tricky to push in there. I kind of have to get it in here at an angle. There we go. That one was pretty easy. Okay, we're in. Let's take these 005s out with some carbon fiber. That's a good idea. Put this guy back in. Voluminous. I have a feeling this is going to fit really well. Oh yeah. I'm on a high-powered 005. Oh, I could feel it in the middle though. I could feel it right around here under the kind of ball of my foot, right centered over here. I have to see how that feels on the run. I'm filling up way more of the space inside of the shoe than this one with the standard insole. That's just based on my foot volume, okay? If you're super tight in your whatever shoe that you're putting these insoles in, then it's going to be a tough squeeze getting these in there. You really want to have, I mean, I'm feeling great right now because I had all this extra space in here. So you do want to be careful that you have a shoe that is spacious enough to accommodate this. Door, come on. Yeah, I could feel it. I think it's pretty prominent under center ball of the foot. Right here, but definitely feels way beefier underfoot than this standard one here. So I'm gonna go for a run right now, and I am gonna start off with both insoles in there, carbon fiber plated ones. I'm gonna carry one of these with me. I'll probably carry the double setup, the race one, and the other one here for this right shoe. Maybe I'll switch it just for feeling it out, but maybe not. We'll see. Very early impressions here. They definitely make the shoe stiffer. We're talking about the 005 here. Super flexy, super light. We'll talk about the weight addition in a moment. Not feeling quite as flexy in all directions as the 005 typically feels. Also not as soft underfoot for sure. Right out the box, or actually that tube, I do notice that carbon fiber plate, most noticeably center ball of the foot. I mentioned that as soon as I slip them on, and I'm still feeling that on the run. Feels a little firm right under the middle of the foot. We'll see if they kind of break in a little bit. It is naturally, the carbon fiber plate that is, closer to the foot than it would be if it were, say, embedded in the midsole, as they typically are. The foam that the Carbitex plate is embedded in, Superfeet calls it Super Rev, supercritical foam. Looks obvious to me that it is a beaded TPU with some filler. They don't specifically mention that. Could be something else, but looks very close to a Boomerang or FKT insole from Topo. It has a moisture wicking and odor reducing top cover. Also a sculpted heel, which you saw as I was trying them on. I didn't notice really a super deep heel cup. Again, with the Norda race insole, that's a different story. Even the 005 regular insole, it has kind of a light sculpting along the edges, but I'd say this one's probably slightly deeper than that one. They also specifically mention a contoured arch, and that is something I've been talking about recently in my reviews. A lot of natural shoes, Topo, Mount to Coast H1, New Keen Seek that I've been testing. Definitely compared to the 005, it is adding a little bit of contouring here. That shoe does feel a little bit flat in the middle of the shoe arch area. So if you have a shoe that is along those lines, similarly flat feeling, and you want a little bit more support under the arch, this will give you a little bit of that on top of the carbon fiber plate. Weight is another conspicuous factor with an insole like this. This is actually the heaviest insole that I've measured compared to, say, a regular beaded TPU insole. Of course, without a carbon fiber plate, you're going to add some weight here. This pair here weighs in at 4.1 ounces, 116 grams total. So that's a little bit north of 2 ounces per foot that you're adding on top of your shoe weight. Of course, you have to subtract whatever insole you're taking out. Another reason why the Norda 005 is a good candidate for an insole swap is it's already starting at a super low weight, 8.7 ounces here in the shoe. So if I add 2 to that, we're looking at 10.7, which is not excessive, especially considering you're definitely adding a little bit of stack. The insole sticker, of course, you're adding the carbon fiber plate itself, so you're going up in weight. I mean, really also turning this into kind of a super shoe beyond the super shoe level that it's already at. Not 10.7, but of course I would have to subtract whatever the regular insoles are. Those are kind of light, so probably gonna be in the 10.5 ounce range, maybe a little less than that. For this particular model, stack I have is 34.27 with the regular insole in. So again, you're adding some height here. I would say it's probably going to be in the range of 38, 39 at the heel, and that would put you at, say, 31, 32 under the forefoot. You're definitely moving up there. You're adding that weight. That's a little concerning, but it's becoming kind of a different shoe for sure. Enhanced or not, depends how you look at it and how you feel about the 005 to begin with, and maybe also how you feel about carbon fiber plates and trail shoes in general. Back there earlier in that bigger bouldery section, I noticed a little bit of lateral foot sliding when I stepped on one of those bigger ones, kind of at a 45-degree angle. My foot kind of felt like it was maybe gonna slide a little. Again, this 005, super flexible underfoot. Typically, that would kind of laterally contour around something like that, but throwing the Carbitex plate here, there's really no lateral flex, so you're going to be on kind of a plate in the lateral plane that will shift more than this shoe typically does. If you're putting this insole into a shoe that is perhaps a little bit stiffer than this one, this 005, really one of the most flexible shoes out there. So if you got a stiffer shoe, or maybe a shoe that's a bit laterally stiffer, you might not notice it that much, but did notice it here, and it's something to be aware of. But honestly, I'm not really having any issue maneuvering around at all with this extra insole in there. On the run, I definitely noticed the volume decrease inside the shoe, again, for the volume of my foot with this high volume upper and higher volume insole here. So my foot is filling up the volume inside the shoe much better with this insole, and I think I actually have better feel and probably better maneuverability. At least it feels a little bit more secure as far as the foot maybe not, the shoe maybe not sliding around on my foot, or maybe feeling like I'm maybe shifting on top of the midsole. I do feel more connected, and that's really due to just filling up the volume, not necessarily the carbon fiber factor. Coming back to the weight again, I want to make sure I emphasize the comparative aspect of this. If I did this earlier, just skip forward. 116 grams for the pair here. A typical, if we're going to compare almost apples to apples, typical beaded TPU insole like this, minus the carbon plate. Again, Craft, Topo, they have varieties. Boomerang, probably the original from Innovate. Those are all usually in the range of 70 grams for the pair. So you're talking 70 to 116. So what is that? Let's do some public math here. 45 grams across two separate insoles. So the weight is high. When you put them on the scale, you measure them out, but don't forget added stack carbon fiber for sure, which I'm about to talk about maybe after a close-up here. So the weight difference is not as crazy as it sounds. So let's say I pop the shoe off here with the insole. You can check in there. It seems to fill up definitely a lot more heel space than I had filled up with even the race insole and the standard insole on top of it. I was kind of swimming in this heel, so that's another aspect where, you know, this insole or maybe another particular insole could work out. You can see the arch contouring here. Try to get it at the right angle there. It does seat your heel in there pretty well, and it kind of rolls into a slight bit of contouring just here. There's no big bulge, say, right in the middle section here. I think, and this is how I like kind of my arch contouring, I like it to kind of start at the front of the heel and kind of smooth into the arch. I feel like that's just a much smoother feel underfoot. It doesn't feel like something's just right in the middle there poking up onto you. When I was on some of those bouldery sections, it was this, I felt like I stepped once or twice where I was like this, and my foot wanted to almost come off a little bit here, whereas typically with this Norda, it's so flexible. You could see how I'm stepping here. There's a lot of contouring with this shoe, even laterally. This is just a super flexible shoe. So you're definitely gonna lose some of that with this insole, but I think that's probably, if you're in the market for something like this, that's what you want. I had 100K earlier in the year, a couple 100Ks, and I was considering this shoe, but one part of it was I didn't feel like my feet were strong enough to handle this shoe for such a long distance. It's just that amount of flex underfoot. It really works the foot muscles, and it's soft too. Like, softness in a shoe is gonna kind of tax the muscles of your foot, maybe tax different stuff up the chain, so to speak. If you have a stiffer shoe, that's typically how most of the super shoes are set up. They have some type of plate in there, not necessarily carbon fiber, but over a longer distance, maybe you want definitely a stiffer feel, and it just, there's less wiggling around with the foot. You know, you just want to be solid maybe for slower paces over longer distances. And I think this is probably what you can get out of that, specifically in a shoe like this. I talked about some firmness. I felt it like pretty much centered under here. It almost felt kind of like a metatarsal pad, you know, when I have it pushing up. But I think it's just, maybe I'm just used to the shoe. Like, when you're standing in this shoe in particular, it's very soft and you're kind of squishing into it. The ball of your foot really is able to just go where it goes into the midsole there, because this Arnatel TPEE is super soft. So here you have a quite thick layer of that beaded TPU stuff over here, but then you're kind of running into the carbon fiber plate, so there's less room for the ball of the foot to really like sink into the midsole. So it probably feels more flatter under the ball of foot. So take that as you will, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. It does feel firm under there, but it hasn't been obtrusive, I would say. I was a little worried when I put them on in the car. Perhaps this is kind of, this TPU, they're super durable, but it is going to mold a little bit to the shape of your foot and also into whatever shoe that you're running in. So I would expect over time you're going to get a little bit of shaping of your foot into it. So that may help with feeling one particular point really in this area, kind of just the feel of it under your foot. I don't feel anything anywhere else. I was running through there and it fills up more volume in this shoe for me. So I feel actually more agile and maneuverable with this, even though it's stiffer laterally. So in my reviews, that's one thing I always go over. You know, the fit leads to so much of the feel and ride of the shoe. If you are like securely wrapped in a shoe and feeling good, that goes a long way, and perhaps like most of the way into whether or not you like a shoe. If your foot is swimming around or sliding around and you don't quite have that connection, not just under the shoe, but with the shoe around your foot, it's just a recipe for a bad time and not liking trail shoes. So here, this is working exactly perfectly for me. I think this might be the setup for me. I can't imagine, I don't think I'll go back, particularly in this shoe, with the regular insoles again, because I feel like this makes the fit so much better for me. And I do notice a little bit of pop from the carbon fiber plate. Don't get me wrong. It does feel more like a traditional super shoe. Again, it's within the range of those traditional super shoes now. It's like 10.5 ounces or whatever it is with this insole here. Have to do the math on that one. I should have weighed it. It's more in the range of that weight, and also the little bit of stack increase, it's more in the range of that traditional super shoe. So not that I want to completely change the shoe from what it is, but it kind of brings it to that level or feel. I did bring along those two insoles, the stock ones from the 005 here, but I'm actually not going to put them in. I like the feel of these and prefer it, so I'm just going to go ahead with these and carry on. By the way, I'm wearing my Peak Performance windbreaker here. It's finally coming into the season. I had it throughout most of the summer. Peak Performance there, Swedish brand. Little zipper pocket here. There is a little loop here, and the hook is on the inside, which is a little curious. So when you want to vent it, the loop there is on the inside, and you can hook it on there so you can keep it kind of closed. I always like that feature. It's a little curious that this loop to hook it is on the outside, but normally you'd have two hands free, so not really an issue. If you've watched some of my previous Q&A videos, I've talked about trying the 001, 002 insole in here. That's a beaded TPU insole as well. I felt it was okay. It filled up more volume for sure than the stock 005 insole, but I feel like something about it just, it raised the heel up a little bit too much. I felt like it made the drop a little higher, and it was kind of adding softness on top of softness, which not necessarily a bad thing, but I just didn't feel super comfortable with that setup, at least without really doing more extensive testing before racing like that. So I ultimately didn't do one of my 100Ks in that setup. These Run Pacer Elites here, they don't seem to have at least as much of, or even a noticeable drop from the heel to the front. Maybe they're a touch higher in the heel, 1 or 2 mil, maybe at max, but I feel it less having these in here than the 001 insoles. Another obvious comparison is the Speedland setup. They also have a carbon fiber plate, removable in fact, which wedges between their bottom midsole and a removable top layer midsole. The top layer midsole in those is definitely thicker than the layer that you're getting on top of the plate in these Superfeet insoles here. I do notice a more direct firmness under the ball of the feet with these here, but curiously enough, I never liked having those Carbitex carbon fiber plates in any of the Speedland models that I tested. I always felt those shoes were just more flexible, rode easier, they were lighter without those carbon fiber plates. So I had tried them here and there, but I just never really liked them. I think they're better without them. This could again be coming back to the fact that the midsoles on those are thicker and the foam is definitely stiffer than this 005. That's not saying much because most shoes are, but that shoe is stiffer underfoot, and I just felt like the plate made it even more stiffer. So I was talking about that earlier in this review. If you already have a shoe that's pretty stiff, that may not be the ideal kind of setup to put stiffness on top of stiffness. I do think the way to go is to take a shoe that feels soft and maybe overly flexible, or flexible enough to handle a carbon fiber plate. If you think about it, all the trail super shoes, road super shoes, what's the combination that they go with? The whole idea behind carbon plated super shoes is that they allow you to go with a super soft and perhaps unstable foam, and then you throw that carbon fiber in. None of them really have a stiff or heavy firm foam in the mix. So I think that kind of strategy applies here. Softer, flexier shoe, and then throw in this insole if you want a bit of stiffness and propulsion. The carbon plate propulsive feel, definitely noticeable, definitely evident here. Feeling some pop out of the shoe that you don't necessarily feel. The shoe, I felt always that extreme lightness, agility on foot, just being able to, pick your feet up so quick and get going. Here, definitely notice a little bit of extra weight, but it seems to be offset by the plate. Noticing that pep, a little bit of propulsion right at the end of my stride here. Feels really good. I can see this being a good setup for an ultra race. Carbon fiber is also no doubt protective. If you have shoes that are flexy, maybe feeling thin underfoot or overly soft, maybe lacking touch of protection, this could be a route to go. Throw in this plate here. You saw that kind of big platform under the ball of the foot there. That is certainly going to blunt any impacts from rocks. So you're going to feel a firmness of that under your forefoot, but you also will not feel rocks poking through to your forefoot. I also have to mention, I'm not feeling any ankle or Achilles pulling or tightness at all. Nothing in my lower legs. So to me, that's an indication that the arch contouring is set up well, at least for me. Feel really well supported, not like I'm over pronating or collapsing in. I mean, that's not necessarily what you're looking to stop with an insole like this, but I do find that it personally works well for me. Sometimes with flexible shoes, you'll notice a lot of twisting and pulling with your feet as you go, and really none of that here. My feet, ankles, Achilles, heel, insertion point, lower legs, all feeling very comfortable. So let's talk about the price here. I think Superfeet has rather smartly priced these sub $100. $95 retail, By the way, I will have links in the description below. If you think about regular running insoles, just like regular kind of supportive ones, arch support, pronation control, whatever the different ones are, they're not that cheap. Minimum $50 if you want to get a high quality one. $95 here with a Carbitex carbon fiber plate. Top of the line carbon fiber, by the way. I think that's a pretty good deal. Trail shoes themselves, super shoes with carbon plates, are at least twice the price. Of course, you get the whole shoe. You've got this insole with the plate and you have it. I know these TPU beaded insole types are highly durable. The midsole or insole foam material, whatever you want to call it, that's not really going to wear out for a very long time. So for $95, you have this and you can swap it and test it and try it with any number of different shoes that you already have. You can take shoes that are not super shoes and make them super shoes, or take shoes that are super shoes and make them super shoes. There are, of course, a lot of gimmicky things that come out in the running space, but I don't think this is one of them. Again, you can have it, test it, try it, different shoes. For me, it's just a no-brainer. You can see I'm bundled up here. I had the gloves on earlier, probably need them back on right now. Holiday season is approaching. This is surely going to be on my gift guide. I mean, that trail runner or road runner, excuse me, this shoe can be used in any shoe for that matter. That runner in your life, maybe, I don't know, maybe you're trying to tell them something, they need a little super boost maybe. They probably already have shoes like that, but in any case, it will fit nicely in a stocking, that's for sure, and certainly under the tree or however else you do celebrate. So thank you for tuning in once again to Humble Running. I hope you enjoyed this super insole review. I actually have other standard or maybe a little bit more advanced insoles that are in for test and upcoming, so I'm actually going to have to do an insole roundup. Carbon fiber insoles. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Yay or nay. By the way, I did not choose the 005 here for this test run just because it's a popular shoe. It's actually the first shoe that came to mind when I was offered these. The lightweight, the volume in the upper, the softness, flexibility underfoot, all those just immediately light bulb, perfect match for these insoles. Let me know if there's any other shoes that stand out to you that would work for a carbon fiber insole setup. Any light bulbs going off in your head, let me know down in the comments. Thank you for watching. I'll see you out on the trails next time.